Welcome to Turek Books Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Joshua Turek. We're never going to read all the books we want, but when someone tells us about a book, that's its own valid form of experiencing it. Our guests come in to talk about the books that left lasting marks on them as readers, and that becomes a springboard to who they are, who I am, and maybe who all of us are. So sit back, relax, and enjoy it. And who knows, maybe you'll end up grabbing a book or two. Maybe you've read some of them, and it's nice to hear someone else talk about them. We want this to be like a book club, but without the guilt. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Turek Books Podcast. I'm so appreciative of our guest today. She's a comedy writer and one of my favorite people on Twitter for years. I feel like we've been friends for so long, and now we're finally getting to meet Aubrey Bellamy.
Yes. Hello.
How you doing?
Well, how are you?
Doing well.
Good.
I think you might have to be even closer to the mic.
Okay.
Yeah. That's
Hello.
the shame, because you're like me. We're a bit more soft-spoken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I can get loud, but it takes a lot. Drinks, I guess, but I don't even drink very much anymore.
Yeah. Drinks, anger, or just if someone really charges me up with enthusiasm about like a certain idea.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Right.
Screaming.
Yeah. You could hear me all across this city, really. I'm just it's so cool to meet you in person, because truly, like, I feel like we're closer friends than we probably are.
Yes, I agree with that.
And not like we're even messaging each other, just almost through the things we've put on the internet.
The thought highway.
The thought highway. Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm really, really happy to have you here. How are things? How's your reading life these days?
My reading life is good. It's kind of stacked. I read a lot on my phone through, I use the Libby app through the library because I get ebooks from there. And I'm in a reading mode. Like, summer is a very big reading time for me for some reason, regardless of what I'm doing. And I kind of do it like flipping channels. I can read a bunch of stuff at the same time. They just have to be, they can't all be fiction or nonfiction or whatever. It has to just kind of be different.
I say the same thing. Yeah, it's like TV stations for me. I wonder why summer's reading time. Is it because we got programmed for our summer reading when we were in school, or is it because there's more light?
I mean, I think what my FYP says on TikTok, it's because of school. But I feel like it's my mind is just more available to learn and listen in summer. Maybe it is because of the light, and there's less to do, I guess.
Yeah.
Besides be in a room and try not to be hot.
Yeah, try not to be hot. Yeah, so it's either the air conditioning or laying out by the pool or going
on
to the beach. Yeah. No, and those are all conducive for reading.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because it is you're right. You're more open to the world. I think because you are going outside and it's more, festive, or I don't know. And
TV is also on break, or I guess that's different from now. Now things are more, they just kind of happen all the time. But it used to be TV would be on a break. There'd be some summer blockbusters, but you are more available to consume something else in the summer, or maybe that's how it used to be, and that's just what I carry through my life now.
Well, I'm carrying it too.
Yeah,
because I remember every Thursday night in the fall and winter, it was Friends and Seinfeld. Mad About You, Frasier.
Yep. Must see TV, and then TGIF
on Fridays.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, I have memories of watching Friends and then being sent to bed and then hearing my dad's booming laughter because Seinfeld was on.
Oh, yeah. And then my mom would clock in to watch ER, which I wasn't allowed to watch yet.
Okay.
Watched it later in life, though. Fuck you, Mom. Just kidding. I love you. She's probably going to watch this. So. Just kidding, Mom.
I always told myself when I was a kid, when I grew up, I would eat cookie dough raw, which my mom frowned on.
Yeah.
And I grew up and I did.
Well, the thing about that, too, was we were allowed to eat cookie dough raw, and then my mom read that you weren't supposed to do that, and it was taken away. And I had a really big problem with that. Not I didn't act out because of it, but in my mind, I was just like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I lived through it. It's fine. Like, I'm good. And I don't eat, I can like taste it still. It tastes so good.
So good. I can see my fingerprints indented into this huge bowl because my mom had a bunch of kids of cookie dough, and I would try to like smooth them out because otherwise it was like a forensic kind of situation, you know? And then that reminds me how for the longest time, you talked about the cookie dough being taken away, reminds me how my parents thought Mountain Dew didn't have caffeine.
Oh.
So they'd take us to Taco Bell, and my dad would be like, okay, you could have Sprite or Mountain Dew. And, you know, it turned out Mountain Dew had the most. And so when my dad found out about that, we weren't allowed to have the Mountain Dew.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. I get where they're coming from for sure. But you can't just do that. Like, especially like Mountain Dew, cookie dough, those are delicious, good things that made our lives better.
Yeah.
And to just be like, oh no, it's bad for you actually, and you can't have it. Like, it doesn't track for me.
No, we crossed that line. There's no going back.
Yeah. And it was you who did it. Like, you can't be the giver and the taker.
No. Yeah. Play dumb on this one.
Please.
Yeah. I'll take the stomach aches.
Yeah.
Nothing new in my upbringing.
I didn't even have stomach aches from it, I don't think.
Really?
Probably not. I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe I blocked it out because of my like indignant. But
yeah, I just remember my childhood being littered with stomach aches, and as I reflect on it now, it's because I was eating an inordinate amount of sugar.
Yeah.
Like, come home, stack of Oreos, Entenmann's donuts, you know.
So good.
So good. Dunk them all in milk. Let some of them just sink to the bottom of the milk. Oh, yeah. But yeah, if I connect the dots, it was sugar all along. It wasn't some mystery ailment.
Yeah, I guess. I kind of do that still with caffeine.
You do?
Just like really load it
just
in.
Make it the thing. Ride that highway.
Yeah, I'm just waiting.
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I once told my friend why I couldn't drink coffee with any sort of regularity, and he said, no, that's exactly the reason why I do drink coffee.
Why don't you drink it with? It
like jacks me up. I can't sleep. I get charged with anxiety. I clench my jaw. My, just everything goes off. And,
wow.
And it depletes me. I end up getting more tired than anything else.
Lucky.
I feel like this adrenal fatigue from it. I keep trying. I'll go 2 months, and anyway, this isn't interesting to anyone, but
it's interesting to me.
Really?
Yeah.
Why? Because you could drink
I
cold brew before bed, and you're fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically,
I
think just in general, my mind is working so fast kind of all the time. Like, I'm constantly thinking, like, it's not a brag, it's a problem. So it's just like, I think caffeine somehow slows it down or like brings some things into focus. And sometimes it brings into focus that I'm tired and I just like go to sleep.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure something's wrong with me.
It's like a calming voice. It's a soothing voice in your life.
Yeah. It's smoothing. Like, it smooths it out. It's probably smoothing out my lifespan too.
Who knows?
But also,
could be healthy. I think there's some things that say it's healthy.
I have as much control over that as I would like to think.
The lifespan?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's the thing where, like, Donald Trump eats fast food every day and he outlives marathon runners.
Yeah. He looks incredible.
Well, he's hanging on,
Yeah, no, he looks like shit.
Yeah, but he's 75 and he still has the energy, or maybe older, to be doing what he's doing. 77 maybe, yeah.
Like, I mean, I was trying to think of what they were saying was the difference between him and Biden.
Yeah, just a couple years. Yeah. You're right.
Like, Biden was going to be what, 80?
Well, Biden's a good example. Like, yeah, he was like a pretty active guy, and it's like, what's the difference between him and Donald? What's the difference between them anyway? Anyway, that's a different podcast.
That is a different podcast. Thank God.
I think you all know where we'll move on.
Yeah.
Where I stand.
And same.
I think the two-party system's a joke.
Yep.
Okay, we'll leave it at that, because I'm shocked, actually, a lot of people don't think that, so.
I am shocked as well.
Yeah.
I mean, different podcast. But it is something that is on my list of things that I think about daily.
Me too. Well, let's talk about things that unify people.
Yes.
Books.
Mm-hmm.
How about the books that you brought in today? Anywhere you want to start? Anything you want to tell us? You said you're an active reader.
Yes. So these books are not any of the books that I'm reading right now.
Okay.
But I guess the theme of these that came about was kind of like the end of the world, but ends of different worlds. I guess let's start with Overdue by Amanda Oliver.
Oh, yeah.
I used to work in libraries, and that was my last job before the pandemic ended.
Oh, really?
Or pandemic began. And she, I guess full disclosure, 2 of these books are by friends of mine, and one of them is Amanda. She also went through kind of like a similar stepping back from the library, I guess. And it was just kind of about... my mind is...
What were you doing in libraries?
I was like an assistant or a technician. My last job had the title of librarian proper, but it wasn't. I worked at a music company that had an in-house library, and so I would work with like the editors and the writers there, like getting stuff for them.
Yeah.
And I worked there for about a year, and that was like the last year before the pandemic.
Okay, so it was like a private library of sorts?
And then before that, I just worked in public libraries, like on the floor, circulation, reference.
Wow.
Yes. And I also worked in, my first job was Barnes & Noble.
It was?
In Encino, yeah.
Okay.
And I worked there for 2 or 3 years.
Is the Encino one near the Warner Center?
No, that is the one at the mall,
okay.
the Promenade.
Yeah, that's
AMC
the Promenade. Yes.
And so I would go there all the time too. But I worked at the one that I worked at is now a CVS.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
What was the transition from Barnes & Noble to public library like?
Not that big.
No, right?
Honestly.
Because especially back then, Barnes & Noble actually attempted to be a bit of a third space. They'd have couches in a lot of the locations.
And it's very library-esque, honestly. They wanted there was reference there, you talked to people. That was why I was this makes sense for me to do, work in a public library. And I'm also very community-minded, so it was just kind of seemed like a natural step. And it was a natural step.
That's
Seemed
cool.
It was one.
Yeah, I love that there was little difference between Barnes & Noble and the library.
And then, I also worked at 2 school library, or I worked at a conservatory downtown, and then I also worked at FITM downtown. So it was just kind of bouncing around between different types of library, different types of book.
Yeah, so your adult life has been surrounded by books.
Yes.
Yeah. A lot of people, they leave their childhood, they leave college. I came across a stat that 1 out of 3 people who graduate high school never read another book again.
Wow.
42% of people who graduate college never read another book again.
I mean, I guess I get that. I'm not going to look down on anybody for
No, not at all. It's just
that.
the books disappear.
Yeah.
It's like they were reading books because there was impetus for them to read the books. And then, they are confronting their
I think
lives.
the time disappears.
The time disappears.
And the motivation.
Some people drive 2 hours to work, 3 hours to... It's where are you going to read? I mean, you can listen to audiobooks, but not everyone does.
And it's kind of hard. I listen to audiobooks to go to sleep. But it has to be it has to have been made into a movie before, or I have to have read it before.
Okay.
So that I have a thing to think about or envision.
Yeah. And not just the person's voice.
Yeah. And I have to know the story too, because if I don't know the story, then I'll start thinking too much. And so it's just kind of a controlled, I guess it's being read to fall asleep. From childhood.
Oh yeah. But, no, that works.
Yeah, and I love audiobooks. I love the voices. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends, but for the most part, all the ones I listen to or I have listened to have been good.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it's a totally valid way of doing it, and the before bed thing. That's a good tip.
Yeah.
I read before bed, and that usually does the trick. But maybe a little audiobook sprinkled in there might be a nice way to enter the dream state.
Yeah. It's I don't know. I do think that it affects my dreams. So it really has to It doesn't really affect my choice, I guess. The first audiobook I really liked was The Shining. The guy who read it was Campbell Scott, is an actor that I liked growing up. He was in this movie Singles.
Okay.
But he has a really good voice. But that book is fucked up. It's scary. And so I would be having these like really, really terrifying dreams, and I wasn't putting it together. I'm not smart. Like, I didn't put it together for so long that I was having these crazy dreams because I'm literally listening to The Shining before I go to bed.
Right. It took how deep into that story before you connected the dots?
It ended. Like it finished.
It was years later.
It
you
finished, and then I
it.
started listening to something else, and my dreams were different.
Oh.
And it was like, oh, okay.
That reminds me, when I was like 19, my mom gave me a Tony Robbins motivation CD to listen to in my my CD player with the headphones before, and I was doing it before bed, and I kid you not, I woke up in the middle of the night with a panic attack.
I bet.
Yeah.
You weren't changing the world. You weren't living up to your potential.
Yeah.
In bed.
So maybe that's stuck with me because, I haven't done much listening before bed since. But I think like that sort of intensity of self-talk and like self-motivation. It's like, hey, I'm going to bed. Like, or, hey, I'm going to work. Like,
can you stop scaring me?
Yeah, stop scaring me. I'm not starting my own company, and it's fine.
Yeah. I saw that you read Parable of the Sower recently, and so I listened to that to go to sleep a couple months ago.
Okay.
And it's, really great book. Really great voice, like narrator. But again, like that one messed with my dreams.
I have to think your dreams were on fire.
They were a lot of stuff about like my parents.
Well, because you grew up in LA.
Yes.
So to be reading about this dystopian sort of almost early days of a dystopia, not too early, but it doesn't feel
like on the early side.
Like,
I guess
there's still infrastructure there that's hanging on by this weird thread in that story.
And in that story, like the infrastructure is not, it doesn't seem like she actually interacted with it as it was before. Right. Like it was like a remnant that she was interacting with, and her parents or her dad was like, everyone who is older like knew what it was before.
It's like how we tell younger people about the world before cell phones.
Yeah.
It's like that same
using a
schism.
Pencil.
Yeah, using a pencil, yeah. Okay, so I got it. Because that gave me weird dreams just reading it. And it's a book that I've talked about and I'll continue to talk about because somehow within it there is a love of humanity and there's a groundedness to the dystopia and to California. Being from here like you and I are, something about the way it all shakes out feels very right in a very devastating sense of the world. And yet a lot of us who are like looking at the world today, we can't help but think, we're not too many steps away from a situation like this.
No, and if not already being in it,
already sort of having it slip
and navigating
in place. Hey, doors are flying off planes, and no one, and then the people who are warning you about the planes are being, it's like.
But I have an iPhone, and so it can't be that too far gone, I guess, or is it? Like,
right?
Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Well, and the toys that we have today are still somehow the cheapest things in our lives. Shocking, right? Like, you can still have toys. Those are the only things where the price really hasn't gone up too much. Like, and why is that? And it's like, well, so
that you buy the toy.
Yeah, and so that we stay kind of occupied like children.
Yes, and connected to each other, but also we're not just connected to each other. We're connected to forces that might not have our best interest or our connection at heart.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's tough.
That's right. And then, if you just cycle back to like why the internet was invented, it might have always been for the purpose of surveillance.
Yeah, that's so tough.
Yeah, I know. I know. And then like sold to us under the guise of connectivity. And you and I were talking about like, there was a point in our generation where, before the show, we were talking about how we would meet on the internet. And there was a early days of millennialism, I don't know how old you are, but like as millennials became young adults, there was an optimism about the internet, that it was
Absolutely.
bringing us closer together. I've told this story how I drove for Lyft because I literally thought this is like a new way to like meet people and like, hey, I'm going across town, I'll give you a ride and you throw me a few bucks and we get to know each other. Like when it first came out and you had to put the pink mustache on your car, and I did that.
Yeah, because to make friends.
Yeah, to make friends. Yeah, and so I hook, line, and sinker. Like
absolutely. Like I don't think that the hopefulness about the internet came from me naturally. I think the messages that I was receiving were like hopeful.
Yeah,
and I grabbed onto it because you know you want to be hopeful about the world that you live in.
Yeah.
And I mean, I do for sure. So I'll do anything to be hopeful about this world. I actually want to switch to this book then.
Yeah, on that note.
It's called Golden Days by Carolyn C. And it was written in 1986. And it takes place in like the beginning, the 2/3 of the book. She's kind of speaking more on like a fictionalized version of where her life was. And then the last third of the book is like a nuclear holocaust, basically. Like the bomb is dropped and the world has changed. And so the whole top of the book is seeing like how she got to that point, but not necessarily like how the world got to that point. But once realizing that the world is about to end, or the world as she knew it was about to end, thinking back on all the points in her life where she thought, you know, she had control and like was making all of these decisions, and it still led to the world ending.
Wow.
By no fault of her own.
So it just rips you out of all these micro issues into this macro destruction.
Yes. And this is a very it's a really good LA book. It's one of the best LA books I've read. Like she grew up in Los Angeles, was born in Pasadena. Don't think she ever left. Maybe left for a little while, but the book starts when she moves back. She's 38 and moves back to Los Angeles from New York, divorced with her 2 kids. And it's like a really good picture of what the world looked like in the years that I was born. You know, and it looks like how everything feels right now. Like everyone has kind of raced to this point of life where you think that you did it, you made it to where you're going to be, and then it just kind of all falls away because of the whims of men in the government, basically, and like terrorizing other countries, etc.
Wow, I've never heard of this book. This sounds amazing.
You can borrow it if you
I
want.
mean, I don't know. I'll hold it for a while.
Yeah, you hold it if you want.
I mean, say what you want about nuclear bombs, but like they are great metaphor.
Absolutely. Obsessed.
Like I find a lot of children of divorce are obsessed with nuclear bombs, nuclear warfare. I am one of them. I don't mean to just limit it to us. I'm not gatekeeping with the divorced kids world, but I mean, it definitely is this element that you could place into a story, or even into the story of our lives, stepping out of books, where you're like, it could all end in a moment, and then what does it mean?
Yeah.
And then like having to try to answer those questions.
If you have time.
Yeah, but even under its threat, you are forced to sometimes answer those questions.
And a lot of the book takes place like under the vague threat of something happening at some point, maybe.
Because 80s, Cold War.
Yep, exactly.
California, everyone always thinks California is the first to get it.
Yeah, well, it was like, and my mom, both my parents are also from LA. My mom grew up in Echo Park and my dad grew up in Van Nuys. And so I've always been curious about what the city looked like and felt like to them, like what were they reacting to when they like fell in love or when they decided to have kids. And I feel like this is the first book that I read where I had like a pretty clear vision, like in addition to like stories they told me as to what it looked like and what it felt like. The protagonist of the book is probably about like 20 years older than my mom or so. And so the kids in the book would have been like about my mom's age. And so that I felt like, for me, just like kind of tied it together, like what they might have been experiencing or reacting to.
Yeah. Yeah, and probably gives you even little glimmers of your early life.
Yeah.
Because there was a certain vibe I can sometimes catch where I'm
Definitely.
like, oh yeah, that's what it was like being 3 years old. But like, that's what the world was like, you know?
Yeah. There's like a lot of driving in this book, which I love. It reminds me of Play It As It Lays. Like so much driving, so good. I love books where like people are driving around or walking around. And there's like a lot of walking in this book too.
For what reason?
Why do I like it?
What reasons? Yeah.
Well, I like driving. I personally really like driving around. I love being in my car. I don't have like a nice car or anything, but it's a place where I get to be and do have control to an extent. Like obviously there are bad drivers, but it's the only place where I feel like I'm really good at what I'm doing.
No kidding.
Yeah. Like, and people comment on it too. And they're like, oh, you're one of my favorite people to like drive with. I'm like, oh, thanks. Cool. But I take pride in it, but I like driving around by myself, and I love, growing up here, I didn't drive on the freeway for a long time because I was scared of it, and rightly so. But so I know streets and back roads and just different places to go.
You talking Burbank Boulevard?
Burbank Boulevard,
yeah.
The Cahuenga Pass of
yeah.
of Burbank.
I guess they all know. I guess all the maps. People know about it now, because of all the internet Waze and all that.
But even that, like, I think Waze messes with people.
It does.
Like, I can't imagine that you are absorbing what you're doing when you're listening to the computer.
No, you're not.
You're just like making sure that, you can turn.
And sometimes I think they incentivize you to pass by businesses that advertise with them. So,
oh my God, I didn't even think about that, but now my mind is racing.
Yeah. Like, why does it always want me to
Or it's like, turn left at the McDonald's. I'm like, why do you know what McDonald's is?
Turn left for $2.99. You can get one of 6 items on this meal.
Truly like one step away from that. I don't imagine that wouldn't happen.
Yeah, no way. Like, and then like a limited moment coupon where they're like, if you make this turn right now, you get $1
or if you
off.
Don't make this turn, you could stop here and you can open up a bank account at Bank of America.
Wow.
Horrible.
Yeah,
we
horrible.
Have spoken it into existence, I think.
Yeah, I
stuff
know.
Like that, because that's such a good idea, honestly. Like, if I wasn't totally against it, I wouldn't. Like, beautiful play. Like, wow.
I know. Why can't we just maybe just like, why can't I just work for the evil?
Yeah. Why can't I be fine? Like, why can't I be fine with it? It is more trouble for my life than it is for anyone else's that I can't do it.
Right. My mom was born and raised in the Valley too.
Mm-hmm.
And she talks about like borrowing her neighbor's horse and just like riding it through orange groves in the I guess the late 50s, citrus groves, and like, kind of, it was still pretty undeveloped even then. Yeah. I mean, the Hollywood freeway wasn't built until the 50s. Yeah.
I saw a picture of the 101 by the Sherman Oaks Galleria from, I don't know, probably the 60s or the 50s, and I was like, I feel the lure of the road, like, just when looking. I get it. I get what they meant, because now it's just wall-to-wall cars.
Do you ever feel comfort sitting in wall-to-wall where you're like, okay, at least I'm not hurtling at a high speed? This feels safer, actually.
I try to make sure I don't have a lot of urgency in my life.
Nice.
So when I get stuck in traffic, or if I can't find parking, I'm actually okay.
Okay.
It smooths it out.
So you are like an Angelino who's found, I don't even know if you've found Zen. You've just been cultured by...
Yeah, or maybe I'm just like traumatized and I'm trying to be like, yeah, no, I love it. I absolutely love traffic and I love not being able to find parking. Like... But either way.
Because I went the opposite, like I've spent a lifetime driving in LA and I'm fried on it. Yeah. And I like can't do it anymore.
That makes sense.
I can. I just, I prefer not to.
Yeah.
And so, I just ride my bike and the bus everywhere.
Yeah.
For at least the last 8 months. And I've found more peace of mind through doing that. And yet, there's some definite downsides to it.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong. Like, I had to take my dog to the vet drove my wife's car out to Malibu, and it was like a beautiful day that I never could have gotten to in the same way without the car. Car is an exploration vehicle. Yeah, and I do. I have that option, so I'm not like a full diehard carless guy. But this book, Golden Days by Carolyn C., that sounds right up my alley. And you brought up Play It As It Lays by Joan Didion, another sort of very quintessential kind of LA book. Is this book well known too? And I just don't know it?
I don't know if it's well known. Like, I picked it up off of a table somewhere, it had California fiction on it. I read the back. It had like nods to the apocalypse, and I was like, okay, I'm interested in that.
You've checked some boxes
absolutely,
here.
It's coming. And I think it took me a while too, even after I got it, to read it. And then when I did read it, I think I read it in like a day and a half.
Okay.
I just was not interested in reading anything else or thinking about anything else. It felt so right in a way that kind of shook me, because it was written like the year I was born, and I felt like and then the world ends, and it made me just look at my life in a way of like, oh, like my life happened because the world didn't end the way that she thought it was going to.
Oh.
And now we're at this point that feels very similar to where she was before the world ended, like in the book. And so I'm wondering like what this cycle means. Like, you race to this moment of like extinction in a way, but then the stuff that happens after that, like creating the new world or trying to get the old world back, but with new tools.
Yeah. Well, and you can read literature before the nuclear bomb was invented, and people are talking about the sense of the world ending.
Yeah.
You know, whether it be religious apocalypse or a natural disaster or whatever. So it's these thoughts have plagued people pre this. It's just now we feel like, okay, I'm a person. I know how fallible people are, and a person could push a button.
Yeah.
And so the anxiety only heightens. I'm like squirming in my chair. I'm like, where would I hide?
And it is just like, it's death. Like the end of the world, for every person experiences the end of the world in death. Like,
that's
it's
right.
The end of your world. It's the end of whatever you built. And like, we experience the end of the world kind of all the time, either personally or like in life. And so I think that it's fun to just like think about if the world just literally did end.
Yeah. A good experiment, because it then places a lot of confrontation onto how you're spending your life. Mm-hmm. And someone once told me like, we experience the end of the world every night when we fall asleep.
Sure.
And that kind of put it into some perspective too.
That's how I felt like that. I mean, that for me was probably when the pandemic happened, is when I first had that thought clearly of just like, oh, like, because my world just like ended. Like, everything that I had built or was working toward, like, it went away completely. And that was like, oh, this is world ending. And then my other books are about friends dying.
Okay.
Which was also world ending in a way too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sorry.
No. Hey, that's like pretty profound terrain. You had pivoted from that Amanda Oliver book. I'm friends with her on the internet.
Yeah, no, I feel bad.
It might be because of you, like just through seeing her stuff, through stuff you did.
We were Tumblr friends, Amanda and I.
Whoa.
So we met after like Tumblr ended, like, because she lived in New York and Washington, and so when she moved here, we also had just mutual friends in real life, and so we ended up meeting. But yeah, like I love her, and I think I pivoted away just because like I immediately was like, I love her so much, like she's my friend. I don't want to like be embarrassed, but like
doesn't she live out in like Joshua Tree area now?
Yeah, she lives in the Mojave Desert.
Cool.
I love her. She's great, but we. Similarly, like her leaving the library, we had very like similar journeys, I think.
Okay.
Just of thinking it was going to be one thing, and it is that thing, but it's so controlled by like the government and capitalism still, and it really isn't this place for community. I mean, it is, but it's not. It's so like...
It seems like the libraries are always sort of fighting for their lives.
Yeah. And I don't think that like it's bad to fight for something, but it's hard to be fighting for something that the person who's fighting you doesn't even care about.
Right.
It's hard to fight to be a line item, basically. And, you know, luckily, I guess I was laid off, but I can't imagine if I wasn't. I wonder just like how much longer I would have lasted.
Yeah.
Because it was in being laid off and having the time to think on it that I was like, oh, actually, I don't think I can fight for this in the state that we're in.
Yeah.
And that feels hard to like accept or admit, because you want to be someone who, you know, fights for your world.
Yeah. But yeah, relative to what you're up against and how the tools you have available to you, it's like, well, if I go mad, it doesn't help anyone.
No, it might be fun for me.
Aparna Nancherla was on the podcast, and I had some kind of memorable exchange about libraries that was sort of like, if someone were to try to pitch libraries now, if they'd never been invented, there would just be no chance.
No, absolutely not.
In today's world, with the priorities.
No money, first of all, like wanting to...
Offering services.
Hide sex of society, like... No. Build real estate for them, you know, it's being a miracle to miracle anyone. They happened, and like that they are sustaining in whatever way they are. It was probably like similar to the internet, like sold to people as like an optimistic thing, something to hope for, us all coming together, having a place to learn about ourselves, learn about the place that we live, where we came from, etc. But those are not priorities for most people who are like running our states, our countries, our cities. Like no, because those people will get fired if they do not maximize shareholder value. Exactly. I mean, that's just where it goes to. That's just the impetus of the world we're living in right now. And then the people who are in charge of maximizing share value are the people who are donating to the politicians, and they're responding accordingly. And so it's like that is the priority of our society, whether we want to look that in the face or not. Yeah. But yeah, and so libraries don't fit that vision at all. No. And they're this holdover, this miracle that happened, this kind of relic, and there's just enough passion to keep them going. But yeah, I mean, the Santa Monica Library, some of the locations aren't even open 5 days a week anymore. No. And yet you walk into the main branch and there's 2 police officers standing right there. They're getting paid. It's like, you know, what if they weren't there? Yeah, okay. Would we be able to, you know, it's... And it's like we would be, though they're there not because of danger. They're there for the appearance of danger. Right. Like they are making their existence make sense. And I don't think it makes sense. And so it's hard to look at someone trying to sell you an idea that you don't believe in. Yes. Yeah, it's a bummer. It's a bummer. And I mean, yeah, it could, you know, we could probably follow that trail all the way to the source of all of it. People are so happy still to be on like a board of trustees though. Like that's the lucky thing, I guess, for libraries now is that like there are still some rich people who are happy enough to like have that be their thing that they believe in or optically that they believe in. Who knows? Got it. But until it becomes not in fashion for people to pretend to care about their community and learning, we'll have libraries. Okay. Well, so it's good I don't work in them anymore. Yeah. I have such a no, but I mean that's such a dark perspective. That's such a valuable perspective because this is a book podcast and I'm fascinated by all of it. I've been trying to visit every branch of the LA Public Library. Yeah, and I go to the library still. It's not like I stopped using the services. the Libby app.
Yeah, you were talking about the Libby app earlier.
I love Libby.
Yeah. No, I mean, it sounds to me like it's the kind of thing where like you had to step away because of that.
My love.
Your love. Yeah. And like that's a real thing.
And it's like my love of it and also the world too. Like I have to like being able to see, it was seeing too much, seeing behind the veil, the Wizard of Oz, all that. Like it was just like, no, this sucks. The knowledge is killing me. I can't, but I will continue to participate.
Yeah.
Because you have to.
And isn't that a big thing that helps them is like, hey, go check out a book kind of thing?
Yeah.
Like in a numbers-based world, it helps if there's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
Same with public transit, same with anything.
Yeah. I was going to say, when I worked downtown, I took public transportation. I took the subway. And I did that for like 5-6 years. And
nice.
I mean, it's, obviously not the same as New York or any real subway system, but I loved taking the bus and I loved taking the subway.
Yeah. LA's getting there.
Yeah.
They're building that one to UCLA that's going to be ready in a year or so. And if they could just build one under the 405 that connects the valley to the airport and the beach, I mean, we're talking big numbers.
Yes.
But it is that catch-22 of like you need people to ride the public transportation, but in order for people to ride the public transportation and they want to know other people are doing it. So it's this real sort of weird thing. But yeah, I'm optimistic about it because I think in 5 years, my prediction is that riding public transportation in LA will be like the cool thing to do.
Yeah, or we'll just have to do it.
We'll have to do it.
I think that if the world doesn't end, where we're going is we're going to have to rely on each other and ourselves a little bit more, or at least the way that we used to.
Yeah.
And I do think that will happen.
Cool.
I hope.
No,
that's my
you.
hope. That's my optimism, is that like it can get worse, and it has gotten worse and will get worse. But for some reason, my mind is still like, okay, it's so bad that it has to become good now.
Yeah. I think a lot of people don't see it that way.
No, absolutely not.
I'm with you, and I think a lot of people still are hanging on to the rosier parts of comfort and whatever in the world. And I don't blame them one bit.
No. I mean, especially if you've always been comfortable, if that's always been your life, which is such a small part of society, but like they are the ones who control society. They are so protective of their like comfort and their experience, where it's like, I grew up, I took the bus, I took the train, I walked around, like shit has happened, not even like really bad shit, but like I know what it's like to not be comfortable, and that did not kill me, and it won't kill anybody. I know that for a fact, but you can't tell that to someone who's never experienced discomfort. You can't be like, it won't kill you. And they're like, I don't know, like it might, or they might kill someone. So
right. I mean,
there's
100%.
also that.
Well, and yeah, like, or like, hey, you may have to sacrifice parts of your comfort to gain comfort.
Yeah.
It's not just an all 100% comfort coming in at all time thing. It's like, there may be some give and take.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, I agree. I think the more we can build community and sort of strengthen our bonds together, the better the world will get. And we're working against sort of forces that are trying to prevent that. But
and they can succeed if they want.
Yeah.
Like I'm not gonna, I don't know. Go ahead then. Like take everything away. Like it's not gonna do anything to me. It's not gonna make me believe in your cause more, rich person.
Yeah.
Like it might just make me feel more staunchly myself. So like go ahead. I'm having fun now. Like when you push someone, just like, oh, okay, I'll just do whatever.
Yeah, I'll just do whatever. There's fruit trees.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And it's just interesting how books could lead us down to like such core conversation so fast.
That's also very me, I think, too.
Very
and you,
and
but
me.
like...
Yeah, I think our minds are
like
following
I will
a
just,
similar thread.
I'll either go this or I'll go this. There's never... Like, getting to the middle is, like, the hardest thing for me. But it's just like, you want to go deep down or you want to go high up?
I've noticed, like, since I've been in a relationship for so long, like, I'll just go to parties and just find someone to anxiety spiral with.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't need to flirt anymore. Let's see how far.
That is there is a part in this book where it's like towards the end and she's at a party and you've become not a fun party guest when you realize that the world is ending and like, and whose fault it is and what's happening. And you just come across people who do not want to interact with that.
Yeah.
And she's talking to a therapist and is saying like, my mind is so messed up because the world is ending. And the therapist is like, well, don't you think that like the world ending is like just a metaphor for all the things going wrong? And she's like, no, it's actually the world is ending and everything that's wrong is because the world is ending. And that's why everything is falling apart. And I feel like that's probably like where I am at this moment in my life where, someone can be like, oh, well, there's no more rose colored glasses. It's like slapping them off your face. But I'm so nice. Like I'm chill. Like we're good. But like that's not the conversation we're going to have. But I don't think that similar to you, no one is coming to me at a party to talk about how everything's great. Like, I feel like I get
you have your
sought out sometimes where it's just like, okay, where's Aubrey? Like, she'll tell the truth.
That's funny.
And I love that.
Yeah.
I will take that.
All right. So what about these other two books?
So You Up by Catie Disabato, again, full transparency, like this is one of my good dear friends. Okay.
You do get commission on any sale. Use code
No,
Aubrey
I actually
Bell.
Told her I was going to bring it and she was like, don't feel like you have to do that. And I was like, I don't. Like it actually, and Molly by Blake Butler. This is a memoir. This is fiction. Molly is about Blake's wife who killed herself. And so he's dealing with that. And You Up is about a woman who lives, it's another LA book. It's really good. It's more like East, like Silver Lake, Los Feliz, etc. Who is a medium of sorts, and her dead friend is texting her while one of their other friends is missing. And so it takes place over a weekend where she's trying to find this person and dealing with like the ghost of their friend texting her about it.
Very that part of LA.
And last year, one of my good friends died. And so I've just been trying to interact more with grief or like reading about stuff. They died before she wrote this, but like it is nice to hear like my friend's voice kind of talking about these things. Yeah. And then with Molly, like there is stuff that he learns about her that is very kind of troubling, and it like changes his view on like who she was before she died and like their relationship. And our friend who passed away, it was like kind of similar, like we were estranged. There's like complicated stuff that went into it. So it was hard to kind of interact with that death. Like I've known a lot of people who've died, but this one was like particularly kind of like hard. Yeah. Because it wasn't like, oh, like he fell out of a plane or like something random. Like it was a lot of stuff led up to it. And I'm still figuring out how to interact with it. Yeah. And so I feel like I think that's what I go to books for, especially like fiction. I love like knowing what was kind of going on in the world and then seeing how this person dealt with it. Yeah. Like in like a fictionalized way. Like it helps me with like empathy more than I think like learning the facts, because facts are not facts.
The choices they make to cope.
Yes.
And then also like in grief, it's odd how indirectly you'll find things that connect to that grief. Yes. It's not always like, it's interesting. It's not even like the friends you think you're going to get the right words from that you've been hanging out with all the time who give it to you. It's some random person who you only kind of knew or
even like a Lyft driver. Like, I mean, it's truly. I like this, and this person was like the group. We have a group of friends, but they were very like integral, and we all know each other through them. And so without them, we're all kind of, I'll speak for myself, just like going through this thing of like the person that you met is like also technically dead too, because they took her with them. But that's not necessarily true. It's just like something to work through. And think about, which is tough.
They were a medium that led to other relationships.
And they really like were. And so a lot of us, like, and I'll just speak for myself, like we'll probably spend years wading through that.
Wow. And these books have some familiarity or and some kind of connective.
Catie's book is just like, it's such a fun book while being so sad. And very real about like friendship and the place that you live. And Molly, like, it's mostly relatable because of like the complicated past, but that's nice because a lot of books about death, or when people talk about people who died, it's always so like rosy and just like, well, like they would have lived like this life and it would have been, and it's just like, no, they wouldn't, they died. Like, and just, they wouldn't have done anything because they died. And it's refreshing when people talk in that way. And like they just say the truth, and the truth doesn't take away from the good and like how they were, like it adds to it. But again, we live in such a world where optically, and maybe this is like an LA thing too, but the optics are like so important.
Well, it's also like, a lot of the stories we've been trained on have had to have these sort of redemptive arcs, or these feel good endings, or these spiritual resolutions, for you to like come back and watch the next movie or whatever. But when really it's like, the humanizing part that we then go through is so different. It's like, it's complicated. And you redefine your relationship with that person many times after they're gone. And I'll catch myself over the years being like, oh, my dad would have loved it. And it's like, no, like, he probably wouldn't have loved it. He'd be eating a bowl of cereal, like ignoring half of what you just said.
He'd be on iPad with his headphones on. Like,
no, your version of him who you've now created
because you're so sad.
Which is fine. Which is totally fine. And
it's like, that's your right to do as the person who's alive. Like,
and it's almost like a little flame you're keeping lit for that person, which is like a tribute to them. But the them changes.
And it feels weird when they change when they are dead. And you're just still, it can, at the worst, feel manipulative, but at its best, you're just like, but that's my right. Like, I'm allowed to make this what I want to make it because it was taken away from me. Like, there's so much of this that was not my decision. So I'm going to pretend that he would love this movie, that he would have like gone to Black Friday or something. Like, it just, no.
Well, I mean, I really appreciate you sharing that, because that's the real stuff, but it's not always the stuff we want to face head on all the time.
No. And I understand that, like, when people don't want to see the negative in anything, I'm like, for sure, like, let's not. But it's just hard sometimes when, like, you just live in reality and you can't stop living in reality. That also, I didn't bring it. I'm reading it on Libby, another book called Grief is for People by Sloane Crossley. And she also, like, one of her friends, it was closer to my experience as like someone that she was close to at a time, but wasn't close to when they died. It happened, and she was like dealing at the same time with being robbed. And so she got really into finding the robber and like creating this narrative as to like where everything could be and like what happened. And I find myself I can get very obsessed with like what happened, whose fault is this, whose name, like who do I strangle about this? And just, you can't, like, it's so far gone at this point that like whoever's fault it is, if they existed at all, like definitely doesn't exist now.
You're playing detective to fill
your time
questions
and not cry, like which is fine.
My friend Chris Estrada, who was on like our second episode, he had this old joke about how after he got broken up with, he'd drive around LA trying to solve the Black Dahlia murders.
Oh my God, yeah. Like I have not done that, but whenever I see, stuff about like Reddit detectives, I'm like, if I had a little more motivation, and like better computer skills, that would be me. Like I have to know what happened.
It makes me think that grief is the ultimate mystery.
Yeah,
and
I mean, 100%.
It sets our mind in that detective mode.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, all the better to cope if you have like a physical world of things to attempt to solve, rather than just like go through that endless.
Watch one episode of Unsolved Mysteries and you're just like, I'll do it. I got it. I got it. I got enough details and Google. I can figure this out.
I always loved that HBO show Bored to Death.
Oh, yeah.
It was like just a very kind of low stress version of this, where it's like, it's just like kind of a bumbling fool trying to solve crimes from Craigslist ads or whatever. But yeah, felt like spot on to how a lot of us just approach life or something.
When I was on a walk in early pandemic, when it was like walking time, and for a while someone was there were signs up for a missing brown cat, and it just said missing brown cat. There wasn't a picture, there wasn't anything, and I became mildly obsessed with I'm going to find this cat.
Oh, I believe it.
And so I would just like walk around. I wasn't doing anything to find the cat except walking around and like looking for a cat. But
and also like so many brown cats to find.
Yeah. And I didn't see one brown cat the entire time.
No kidding.
I saw other cats, but not that one. And so then I was like, oh, was this a trick? Were they just like tricking people? Was this a kid just like making signs? I don't know.
Just giving you a cute little pandemic activity.
Yeah, which I needed.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I got obsessed with like finding fruit trees in people's yards that I can take from. I was like, well, we're kind of scavengers now. We're in that mentality. And I was like driving around, like instead of having to go to the grocery store and wait in line and wear the masks and wear the gloves or whatever, it was like, in those first few months, it was like, I'll just go pick a lemon out of a backyard tree that's hanging over this sidewalk or something.
Community,
yeah.
We're going to build our better world now. And I'm going to start it by stealing from your tree.
I'm going to need your fruit tree. Just the excess.
So you can come to my house and take something if you want. But I'm going to take your fruit.
Community is going to happen that way. It's going to be like, I have a lemon tree in my backyard with way too much lemons. You know how to dress a minor wound.
Yeah.
I know how to sing a song around the campfire, whatever it is. And like, before long, you've created a network of like caring and resources for people. And people are out there doing it right now.
Yes.
I'm still wrapping my trained by individualism head on how I think I can do it in a way that feels not so compromising, but also figuring out how to cede my sense of control to trusting other people in that sort of wider way.
You're in a buy nothing group, right? Did I see that you? Yeah, I'm in one too. I feel like that's the future, is the buy nothing group. I had a hangover a few months ago, and someone just happened to be like, I have a bunch of saltines and ginger ale that I don't need anymore. And it was like that day, and I went and got it, and that felt so like pure and beautiful to me. Like,
that's amazing.
And that to me, I was like, this is it. Like, I just saw it. I saw the next, 25 years or whatever, like the next world to build. And it's just that. It's the best thing that came out of Facebook, I feel like, or Meta, whatever.
Yeah. Is that how much simpler it is to exchange and share than we really...
And it was the first time I had seen something kind of normal like that. Like, not normal, but just so... It felt like magical in a way, because it was like, who's just... this person, I'm connected to this person. Like, I would do that. I would give up ginger ale and crackers. And like, before I did it though, I'd be like, oh, this is so silly. Like, who's going to need this? But for me to then be like, oh my God, like my head is killing me. I feel like I'm going to die. This is exactly what I need. And I don't want to go to the store, but I will happily like get in my car, drive a couple blocks, get this from you. And it was so nice. Like, obviously I think about it all the time.
That's amazing. Yeah, as simple as that. I had a somewhat more self-involved version, but like people ordered my poetry book.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I rode my bike down to the post office and I shipped off their poetry books. And then with the bags that I had kept the poetry books in, the tote bags, I rode my bike a few blocks to the farmer's market and I filled those bags up with food that the farmers had grown. One of the farmers knew who I was and we talked, and so I bought some of his stuff. And then I rode it home in those same bags and I was like, oh yeah, in my ideal world, I would tell people stories and then that would maybe be my service.
Around.
And then, fill up I don't know, just the idea of filling up the bags with things you can provide and then getting them filled up with things other people can provide and going home. It just felt pretty cool in still sort of a commercial way, but
sure. I mean, but everything is going to feel like that because that's just the world we live in.
Yeah, it's still transactional. We're still paying rent. It's like we're not out of...
It's just a monopoly game, like giving each other this and that for this.
But where you could find the humanity between it and then start widening that seems like that would be the goal. Yeah,
and being like, look, aren't we having so much fun while we're communicating with each other and like interacting with each other? And it's like, I feel like you do have to it's weird to step out of the moment to tell someone like, we're having a good time, see, like, and it's working. And they're like, okay, I never want to trade anything ever again. You're strange. You're weird. But eventually it'll be okay.
I agree. And I think that's actually a great place to conclude things on we went through a lot of different terrain, but ultimately ended in like community and hope. And that's the good stuff. All of it, in my opinion.
Oh my God, yay.
Yeah, so Aubrey Bellamy, thank you so much for your time. I've treasured this conversation. I'm going to read this Carolyn C. book, Golden Days. I appreciate all your picks and getting to meet you.
Yeah, so nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Very fun.
Yeah, very fun. So thank you, and thanks for listening to another